hope you all are fine. In the last class, I have discussed the new chapter, mineral nutrition, and in that chapter, we have seen some of the macro and micro elements. Now, in today's class, let us move to the next element, that is sulfur. Sulfur is a mineral or an element which is absorbed as sulfate ions. When we talk about the functions of sulfur, then it plays a major role as a constituent of two amino acids, and these two amino acids are methionine and cysteine. As the chain of amino acids helps in the formation of protein, so it also helps in the synthesis of protein. So the sulfur is the main constituent in the major amino acids like methionine and cysteine, and it also helps in the synthesis of protein. Now, when we observe the structure of protein or the polypeptide chains, then we can see that in these two chains, in between these two chains, one bond is present, and this bond is called as disulfide bonds. So this disulfide bonds are present only when there is an element called sulfur is present in the polypeptide chain. Let us take two examples here. The first example is antibodies. When we look at the structure of antibodies, we can see the two types of chains, and they are light chains and heavy chains, and in between these two chains a bond is present which is called as sulfide bond. So in this way, the sulfur is a constituent, or it helps in the synthesis of proteins. Whereas in this other example, insulin, in the structure of insulin, we can see the two chains that are alpha and beta chains, and these two chains combine with each other due to the presence of disulfide bonds. The other function of the element sulfur is it helps in the synthesis of vitamins like biotin and thiamine, and it also required for the formation of coenzyme A or CoA, we can say, and this coenzymes helps in carrying out the processes like respiration and photosynthesis. Therefore, the sulfur is playing a major role in carrying out the main processes like respiration and photosynthesis in the plant body. This sulfur is also required for the formation of a substance called ferredoxin, and ferredoxin is a protein, sulfur containing protein, which helps in the transportation of electrons, and due to the transportation of electron, it also helps in the generation of energy molecule called ATP. The last function of sulfur is it is required for root nodule formation. The root nodule formation is the division of cortical cells. When the cortical cells of the root divided, it forms a nodule like structure, and that is called as root nodule, which helps in carrying out the process of nitrogen fixation. So the sulfur is a main element which is helping in photosynthesis process, in respiration, and also in the process of nitrogen fixation in the plant body. Now, when this sulfur is not present in the plants, or when a less amount of the sulfur is present in the soil, then that shows the deficiency symptoms. The deficiency symptoms of sulfur includes chlorosis. As we have already discussed, that chlorosis is defined, or it is a biological term which is used for the yellowing of leaves. So the leaves turn yellow when there is a deficient of element called sulfur, and when the leaves turn yellow in color, after some days they may fall off. So due to the deficiency of sulfur, the leaves may fall off. And we can also see the excessive root growth in the absence of sulfur. Due to the deficiency of the element sulfur, we can observe the excessive growth of the roots. When these roots grow excessively, they form some lumps like structure in them, and these lumps are going to block the xylem and phloem tissues of the root. And due to the blockage of xylem and the phloem tissues of the root in a plant body, there will be no possibility to move or to absorb the minerals and the water which is present in the soil. That may result in the death of the plant. So the deficiency symptoms of sulfur include chlorosis, leaf fall, excessive root growth, and the death of the plant. Let us move to the next element, that is iron. iron is an element which is absorbed in the form of ferric ions. Iron is present in the form of ferric ion in the soil, and that ferric ions are going to be absorbed by the roots of the plant. Now, what are the functions which is going to be played by this element or mineral? So, the iron is a constituent of ferredoxin and cytochrome. In sulfur also we have seen that it is a constituent of ferredoxin, and even so iron also plays a major role as a constituent of substances or the iron containing proteins called ferredoxin and cytochrome. Ferredoxin and cytochrome are the iron containing proteins which helps in the electron transport. So they are responsible for the for carrying out or for the processing of electron transport chain, and as they are responsible for electron transport chain, and during this chain, during the electron transport chain, we can say that many pathways are going on, and during electron transport chain these substances or these iron containing proteins helps in the processes or helps in photosynthetic as well as in the respiratory pathways, and as they are helping in carrying out the processes of photosynthesis and respiration, it also helps in the generation of ATP or in the generation of energy during the processes like photosynthesis and respiration. So this is the continuation of first function only, that it helps in the generation of energy. Now the major function of iron is it acts as a constituent, or it is a main constituent of certain enzymes like peroxidase and catalase. Peroxidase and catalase are the enzymes which are found in the peroxisomes, and they are responsible for the dissociation of hydrogen peroxide. This hydrogen peroxide is a toxic. So when it is going to be accumulated in the cells, it shows the toxicity in the plant body. Now to reduce that toxicity which is due to the presence of hydrogen peroxide is so to reduce that toxicity or to remove that toxicity, the peroxidase and the catalase needs to activate, and this peroxidase and catalase contain iron compounds in it, and that iron compounds are helping in the dissociation of this toxic substance called hydrogen peroxide. So these are certain functions of the element iron. Now when this element is going to be deficient, then what are the symptoms we can see in a plant body? So the first symptom which we can see due to the deficiency of iron is chlorosis of only younger leaves. Till now we have seen or we have discussed that the chlorosis can be seen first in the older leaves and then it can be seen in the younger leaves, but due to the deficiency of the element iron, the chlorosis, that is yellowing of leaves, first appear in the younger leaves, and it only appears in the younger leaves. We cannot see the chlorosis of the older leaves due to the deficiency of iron. The chlorosis of the leaves takes place only in the young leaves in the case of iron elements. And the next deficiency due to the absence of iron element is chloroplast production will be less. As the chlorophyll pigment is not producing, due to the absence of chlorophyll pigment, chlorosis takes place. So as the chlorophyll pigment is not producing more, the organelle in which that pigment is going to be produced, it will also be less. So therefore we can see the less production or an unorganized chloroplast in the case of iron deficiency. So these are certain functions and deficiency symptoms of the element iron. Let us move to the next element, that is manganese. The manganese is absorbed from the soil as manganese ions, and when we see the roles which is played by the element manganese are, it acts as an activator of enzymes like malic dehydrogenase, oxalosuccinic dehydrogenase and nitrate reductase. The malic dehydrogenase and oxalosuccinic dehydrogenase are the enzymes which are responsible to carry out certain steps in the Krebs cycle, and this Krebs cycle is a pathway by which the respiration can take place. There are many pathways, but one of the pathway by which the respiration or the cellular respiration process can be carried out is Krebs cycle, and in this Krebs cycle malic dehydrogenase and oxalosuccinic dehydrogenase are the enzymes to carry out certain steps of the Krebs cycle, and the activation of these enzymes is only possible in the presence of an element called manganese. The next function of manganese is it helps or it is required in the synthesis or in the production of chlorophyll, and this chlorophyll helps in the process of photosynthesis which is carried out at the surface or which is carried out in the leaves of the plant, and it also required for the photolysis of water. Photolysis of water is the splitting of water molecule during the process of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a process which can be takes place in two reactions. There are light reaction and dark reaction, and in this light reaction there are two steps, non-cyclic photophosphorylation and cyclic photophosphorylation, and during non-cyclic photophosphorylation this photolysis of water, that is splitting of the water molecule, can be takes place due to the presence of manganese ion, and this splitting of water molecule produces or it releases oxygen as its byproduct, and it also gives certain electrons to carry out the process named photosynthesis. Now let us see the causes or the deficiency symptoms which is due to the absence or due to the less amount of the manganese present in the soil. Grey spot disease in oats. This is a disease which is significant only in the oats, and when we observe the other plant which shows the deficiency of manganese, but it does not show the grey spot disease. So this one is a particular disease which can be observed only in the oat plants, and this grey spot disease is caused due to the less production of chlorophyll in the leaves. Chlorophyll is the pigment which imparts green color to the leaves, but when this chlorophyll production will be less or it is going to be decreased due to the deficiency of manganese ions, then it shows some patchy appearance, some grey patches on the leaves of the oat plants, and that patches is referred to as grey spots, and the disease is named as grey spot disease in oats. And the next symptom, as we have discussed while reading the functions of manganese, that it helps in photosynthesis as well as in respiration reactions, and also it helps in activation of nitrate reductase which is required in the nitrogen fixation process. Due to the deficiency or due to the absence of this manganese ions, so we can see the rate of the photosynthesis and the respiration would get affected. And due to the absence of manganese ions, chloroplast is present without chlorophyll and starch grains. Because chlorophyll production will be less, that's what the chloroplast, which is an organelle and in which this chlorophyll molecule is present, will also get affected, and it is present without chlorophyll and without starch grains. So these are certain functions and deficiency symptoms that can be seen in case of manganese. When we see the element zinc, it is absorbed as zinc ions from the soil, and the functions include it is required for the activation of enzymes, and that enzymes include carbonic anhydrase, phosphorylase and carboxylase. Let us discuss the functions of these enzymes which are activated by the presence of element called zinc. When we see the function of carbonic anhydrase, it is an enzyme which converts the carbonic acid, which dissociates the carbonic acid into the carbonate ions, and that carbonate ions is going to be absorbed or it is going to be utilized by the RUBP or Rubisco enzyme during the process of photosynthesis. And when we see the next enzyme, that is phosphorylase, it helps in the addition of phosphate bonds in the ATP, and carboxylase is an enzyme which is activated in the presence of zinc and which helps in carrying out addition of carbon dioxide in certain reactions. So this zinc is responsible for the activation of enzymes like carbonic anhydrase, phosphorylase and carboxylase, and ultimately it is going to help in carrying out the process called photosynthesis in the plant body. This zinc is also required for the synthesis of an amino acid called tryptophan, and this amino acid tryptophan is bonded by the other amino acid and it forms the chain like structure, and that chain of amino acid is called as protein. So therefore the zinc is also used, or it is essential in forming the structure of proteins. Zinc is an element which is essential for the synthesis of a substance named auxin. Auxin is a growth promoting substance. So when this auxin is synthesized by the presence of zinc or the zinc ions, then it helps in the elongation of the plant body, or it helps in increasing the height of the plants. Zinc is an element which is also essential, or which is also required in the process of fermentation. It activates certain fermenting enzymes, and that fermenting enzymes is going to carry out the process of fermentation. Therefore the zinc is an element which helps in the activation of fermenting enzymes also. Now when this zinc is not going to be present, or it is not present in a enough amount in the soil, then what are the deficiency symptoms that we can see in the plant? One disease named little leaf disease can be seen due to the deficiency of zinc in the plants. As the name tells, that the size of the leaf reduced, and due to the reduction of the size of the leaf, the rate of the photosynthesis will be lowered, because the leaves are the sites where the photosynthesis process can take place, and during photosynthesis, or the result of the photosynthesis will be the synthesis of carbohydrates. Now when the leaf size becomes shorter, the rate of the photosynthesis would get affected, and even plants cannot produce the carbohydrate in the large amount. So the carbohydrate production will also be get affected when there is a deficiency of the element zinc. Due to the less production of the carbohydrate, the internodes get shortened, and we can see the stunted growth of the plant. And also we can observe the necrosis, which is a technical term for the death of the tissues. When the carbohydrate is not enough for the plant body to carry out some other processes, then it may result in necrosis, which is death of the tissues can takes place. So these are some of the functions and deficiency symptoms we can see in case of element zinc.